Hi 7th graders, I hope you've been doing well. Today we are going to combine the last two lessons of Unit 5 together. So 5.6 and 5.7 we're going to do all in this one video because they're both very similar. Okay, so 5.6 is about converting units of measurement and 5.7 is about scale factors. So our learning targets is I can convert units of measure using a conversion or scale factor, and I can convert measurements using a scale factor. Alright, so let's get started. So our vocab word is conversion factor. A conversion factor is a ratio that represents the same quantity but uses different units. So for example, you may have heard of 1 foot before, and 1 foot is really 12 inches. So those two numbers are exactly the same. They mean the exact same thing, but the measurement is different. Okay, the units on the end are different. Same thing goes for ounces and pounds. 16 ounces are in 1 pound. These are equal. They're the same thing, but we're using different measurements or different units. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to practice 4 problems and you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. Okay, so we need to convert each measurement. So we are going from 22 gallons and we want to figure out how many quarts that is. Okay, so they give us a hint here. 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So using that hint, let's set up a ratio. So we have 1 gallon in 4 quarts. And I'm just abbreviating. QTS stands for quarts. Okay, so that's the ratio that they gave us. That's the conversion factor. Now we want to figure out, we know 22 gallons. So 22 gallons is going to go on the same side as gallons is in the first one. So it's going to go on the top. Okay? But we don't know how many quarts are in 22 gallons, so that's an X. So now we solve our proportion just like we would in all the other lessons. We cross multiply. So 1 times X is really just X. And I'm going to open up my calculator here and type this out. Then we're taking 4 times 22, which gives us 88. And since we don't need to solve for X, 88 quarts is in 22 gallons. And that is your answer. Okay, let's practice another one. This time we're going from miles to inches. So they tell us our conversion factor is 1 mile every 63,360 inches. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that out as a ratio. 1 mile every 63,360 inches. Super long. Okay. And then we are going 3 miles 2 inches. So that 3 miles has to go in the same place that our miles goes, so it goes on the top. But we don't know how many inches that is, so that's our X. So now we cross multiply. 1 times X is really just X. And then 3 times 63,360, I'm typing that into my calculator. You can do the same. And we get 190,080, and we're talking inches. So we're just setting up ratios. All right, let's do the next one. Number 3, 127 centimeters, 2 inches. Okay, our conversion rate is 1 inch. Is about 2.54 centimeters. So let's write that out as a ratio. And that's equal to, so it's talking 125 centimeters. Well, we have centimeters on the bottom, so that's where it has to go. And then the top is our X. Okay, so we cross multiply. 1 times 127 is 127. And that's equal to 2.54 times X. So now we have a little bit more work because we want X by itself. So right now we need to divide by 2.54 from both sides. And those cancel out. We're left with just X on the right hand side. So 127 divided by 2.54 gives us 50. And we're talking inches. Alright, and our last problem of these ones. 132 ounces, 2 pounds. And they tell us 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. So let's write that. And pound is really abbreviated as LB. Kind of weird, but that's what the abbreviation is. And ounces is OZ, if you don't want to write it out all the way. Okay? And they're telling us we want to find 132 ounces. So that goes on our bottom. And X is our pounds, and we don't know. Okay, we cross multiply. 16 times X is equal to 1 times 132 is just 132. Then we need to divide by 16 from both sides. 16s cancel out. We're left with just X on the left-hand side. 132 divided by 16 is 8.25 pounds, or LB. Awesome, so that is our lesson on 5.6. Now we're going to go down to 5.7, which is pretty much the exact same thing we were just doing. Okay, we're setting up ratios and then using cross multiplication to solve them. So we have one new vocab word. It is scale. A scale is a ratio that compares the measurements of a drawing or model with the actual measurements. So this is super important when you're looking at a map or when you want to draw something, like maybe you're going to be a contractor one day and you need to make a house plan. You're obviously not going to get paper that's as big as how big a house actually is. You're going to make it smaller, and then you'll just multiply your measurements to get how big it actually is when you draw it, or when you actually build the house, not draw it. Okay, so let's take a look at two examples. So we have two different numbers here. We have 1 centimeter to 320 meters. Our 1 centimeter is super small. That's the drawing. Okay, that's how big it is if you drew it. But actually, if you actually built it, 320 meters is how big it actually is. Okay, so there's one example how you could see it. You could see it written as a ratio with the colon. Okay, another example that you could see is you could see it written as a fraction. That's probably the way that you'll write it when we solve them. Okay, so our 1 inch is the drawing. So if you drew it, it's only 1 inch. But actually, if you drew it or if you built it out, it's actually 16 feet. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's practice some of these. So we are going to use the scale to find the actual measurements. So on our map, the scale is 2 inches to 35 miles. What is the actual distance between Kansas City and St. Louis? So we're doing the exact same thing we did up above. They gave us our scale. So that's one of our ratios, 2 inches to 35 miles. Okay, we want to know how far these two cities actually are. Okay, so let's take a look at our map. On our map, how far are they? They're 13 inches. Okay, so the inches, is that going on the top or the bottom? Right, it's going on the top. So 13 inches goes on the top, and we want to know how far that actually is if we were to drive it. Okay, so now we cross multiply. 2 times X is 2X. And then 13 times 35. Let me type that into my calculator. We get 455. And then we need to divide by 2. So we get X on the left-hand side. 455 divided by 2 gives us 227.5, and we're talking miles. Awesome. So St. Louis and Kansas City are really 227.5 miles away. So that's how we would use a scale to find how far they actually are. So now let's take a look at the second one. Owen is drawing a scale drawing of the middle school. The gym, which is 66 feet wide in real life, is 11 inches wide in the drawing. What scale did Owen use? Alright, so the gym is 66 feet wide in real life, but it's only 11 inches wide in our drawing. So our scale, if you remember up here, it's the drawing divided by the actual. So how big was our drawing? Right, it was only 11 inches. And how big is the actual gym? Right, it's 66 feet. So what we want to do is we want to divide this. We want to simplify this ratio. Okay, well, we could divide both of these numbers by 11. 11 divided by 11 is 1, so 1 inch. 66 divided by 11 is 6. So our scale is 1 inch in the drawing to 6 feet in real life. Alright, so that was our lesson. We're setting up proportions and we're solving. That's all we're doing, okay? So if you have questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest.